Oh,
All
thank
right.
you.
So, okay, let's move on to the recent roster news. You know, lots of, lots of official announcements of players leaving, but let's start off with, let's start off with who's coming to China. Our favorite Hoon,
Oh god, the
the
one and
only Hoon.
Yay.
only.
Okay, so Easyhoon joined Vici Gaming for reportedly a large sum of money. I think it was like the first at first it was said to be like 850, that US thousand US dollars, but I mean, they've said that it's, not that amount, but we can say it's like pretty like close. It's up there. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It'll
So
probably surpass that with the streaming contract, which probably wasn't included in the salary, and the signing bonus, which probably wasn't included in the salary.
So yeah, basically, bottom line is Easyhoon's going to be rolling around in dough.
Yeah.
Now, and I mean, Easyhoon did also release a statement, about his thoughts about leaving, the last year playing for SKT. It's not like that, his own. It was very polite, but I mean, he was pretty frank about how he felt. So, how do we feel about, Easyhoon coming to China, Vici Gaming, and prospects? So, let's start with you, Emily.
I think the saddest quote from Easyhoon's interview was like he said, "After I descended from the stage and Sanghyuk showed up, which is Faker, everyone started to chant out his name, Faker. After coming down from that stage, I had a lot of thoughts. What kind of meaning will I end up having on this team? And in the end, isn't what people want the most Faker?" So like
Yeah.
I think I'm really like there's two things here. Do I care about Easyhoon getting money? And yes, like I honestly don't think, and I guess I'm probably gonna try to be more outspoken about this, even though I'm afraid of getting yelled at by people on Twitter. But like I don't feel like money should be this horrible dirty word in esports, and I don't feel like players should be ostracized or talked down to or like yelled at for wanting to have more money paid to them. And I think Easyhoon, looking at a lot of his thoughts from this season, I think he's really grateful for SK Telecom for keeping him on, because he did express his apprehension when sister teams were dissolved, and he wasn't sure if he'd have a place, because that did drastically cut the amount of starting positions on top tier teams, or in top tier organizations is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
But I guess like I'm glad he's getting his money. At the same time, do I think Vici will be a good team? And the answer is probably not. It really depends on who they get for that bot lane, since another thing that I'm sure we're gonna touch upon is that Mata left, right? So we know that Dandy is there, and we know that Easyhoon is there. And is the team actually gonna perform? Like, am I excited to see Vici play? Not necessarily. Am I excited to see Easyhoon play and get money? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I
like
mean,
Long.
okay.
I like
Long's
I
Long.
mean,
good, yeah.
Yeah. I like Long, Dandy, and Easyhoon, but my thing is that I don't care who's on that roster. You could have gotten Faker, and they'll probably still not be that great internationally. Just because I don't think their organization is one of those organizations that generally enforces the best practice ethic or enforces listening to coaches or management. So
Yeah. For me, I think that I've always thought this, that like for Chinese teams always kind of, for the most part, not did World Elite? No, okay, I guess not. But for the most part, the top tier Chinese teams, they wait out to see the best Korean players, like for instance what they did with Samsung and what's it called? I guess with SKT as well, in terms of Easyhoon. Um, and they buy them out, and they think that's the answer, and it isn't. I mean, I guess it's a big help, but if you don't have a structure in place to even have proper practice, because it's a team game, it's not a single player sport. So when I hear about like the fiasco of World Elite and the players on there and Spirit, et cetera, and that all that drama, you may not know the full story, unless if you were there, but the big story that you knew that was literally just sitting in the room in the entire discussion is that their practice and mentality is shit. And that was it. I was like that. That's what I got from reading that. I was like, okay, that's the like. I wonder why World Elite wasn't doing well. Was it because Spirit didn't care about the team or about like? No, it wasn't.
So what I want to sort of like ask is, okay, so if for SKT, with the mid laner that they chose sort of dictated the type of game they played. You know, when they played Easyhoon because he was such a safe laner, Bengi was able to go top more, and so do you think that with Easyhoon joining, and I mean, again, we don't really know the full roster at this point, but you know, assuming that Dandy's still playing, you know, and he's sort of like in the past been a pretty proactive jungler. Do you think that Vici's play style is going to change at all, or like how do you like see it playing out just from like the mid and the jungle perspective?
I think, like, tentatively, and we don't know, like, all of the final changes, I guess, going into next season, what the map is going to look like, but tentatively, how teams use the Rift Herald and stuff like that, if they do use it, and then obviously the minion changes are huge. Getting that early advantage is going to be pretty crucial, and if there's one thing that Easyhoon does really well, it's hold lane. And that's something that Vici struggled with a lot, depending on what mid laner was in there. With just having someone who wasn't constantly going to get pushed back, constantly going to get pushed out of lane because of trades. And Easyhoon will, at the very least, be that. Like, he will be a rock in the mid lane. So you can abuse that and like snowball him, or you can honestly, like, Danny could probably just leave him alone and he'll just do his thing regardless. So that might be super beneficial to Long because he'll get more attention top, presumably. Again, we don't know what their bot lane is going to look like.
Purely, you know, speculative. What are your thoughts, Kelsey?
When Unlimited Potential were successful, it was when Long played carry champions like Fizz or Hecarim, and Amy or Tart would just force feed him. When they weren't, Long was usually on a tank, and they were trying to support Punished or something, or Scatch. So I think it's a good idea to. I think Long can develop into the type of player that can do really well with a jungler like Dandy and a safe mid laner. I think bottom lane will be the two most important lanes will, for a while at least until we get more changes away from things like Rod of Ages and stuff like that, will be top and bottom. So bottom lane is the big question mark.
Okay, well, speaking of bottom lane, you know, Mata did also leave Vici, and so that's sort of, you know, again, even when Mata was on the team, like, again, that bottom lane was very, you know, So what can we expect from bottom lane now that Vici that Mata has left the team?
We have no idea.
Not at all. No guesses.
Anyone but Vici, please.
Well, Vici Gaming in the past, with the exception of their Koreans, which they've gone whole hog on, they've preferred to get players from solo queue and develop their own players. They haven't ever really gotten like a big name Chinese player. In fact, they've given up a lot of like players that become big name Chinese players because they aren't developing in the way that they like. So I feel like the bottom lane we'll get will probably be some no names scattered from Chinese solo queue.
Probably. For me, I think that Vici. This is kind of weird, and a lot of people will disagree, but I think that the jungle position being Korean is probably the biggest limiting factor for them. As big as Dandy is, you can get a Chinese jungler, and you would do really well, but you really need someone in the bottom lane, like a support. And I know that I'm like a biggest heart fanboy, but there are other players as well. Like, and I think even though Mata probably had an awful attitude, he did well in his position.
I actually think that if you're like EDG setup with two Korean carries makes sense because you don't necessarily like you just kind of direct your arsenal to go and kill that, okay? Kill that.
Yeah.
Whereas like the vision control and the coordination with the teleports and everything else are done primarily by like most of the communication is done by like the top and the jungle and the support. So
Hmm.
I think that if we're talking about the ideal Chinese Korean mix, I think that
Yeah.
that's definitely something to look at. I also think that right now, the top of Ionian solo queue, you have mostly junglers like supports and AD carries also, because AD carry right now is really easy to climb elo on. So I just think, yeah, it's just that's what is going to be easier to find in general if you're scouting from solo queue and from like we've had all sorts of these like baby Chinese junglers who have some sort of promise coming up this past year.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can kind of just, and there are still more. Like I was looking at the ladder, I was like, oh, this guy's promising. This guy looks interesting. Yeah.
And it's really difficult for me to find some Chinese support right now other than perhaps God, who's Lei, who's on.
I think there are some still new ones that you can scout. Like actually,
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Okay, so we're basically
MLB has like a really good support and AD carry right now.
So with Mata leaving, we're all sort of a little bit skeptical if they could find like a really good replacement.
Not necessarily skeptical. For me, it's just after I had this interview with Kakao at Worlds, where he made this comment that I think jungle, more than any other role, is really hard to be a Korean player in China, because if you don't know the language, that role is so reliant on communication.
Yeah.
So for me, like that kind of made my opinion think, oh, I kind of looked back at Dandy's games, you know, Kakao's games, and I thought there were all these games where they just didn't do anything and they just seemed lost, and that definitely I think could be a result of communication not working out for them.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point. That's the whole jungle rule. In and of itself, it comes down to communication and how you succeed. Now I know that a lot of what Spirit did was just basically he like in the beginning just will pick Riven, or he'll pick a carry jungler and he'll invade and he'll like create his own opportunities. But that is a bad way to play it out. It's not efficient. You need to communicate with your lanes, because if your lanes fall over, you as a jungler will fall over. That is just simply how it is. And so it's difficult enough as a Chinese player, or at least the same language player, to speaking to your lanes and communicating with them and being on the same page, let alone being on a completely different language. Because not only do you have to pass the language barrier, you have to pass the personality barrier. Because like, who's to say that you can even agree with this person about the game once you I was about to say fuck. I can still say it once you fucking understand him. So it's like it's ridiculous at that point. It really is. I feel like creating that massive barrier is what it is, and I don't agree with it for the most part.
Okay, so with Dandy, it's still unsure whether or not he's going to remain with the team in the jungle position. He is a Korean jungler.
They already came out and said Dandy is gonna stay for next year.
So he
and
is
he'll be
staying.
playing jungle.
So now we can say for sure that he's in the jungle position.
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking for a strong Chinese support to play? Since there's this emphasis so far that that is one of the main communication positions to communicate from.
Yeah.
Is that okay? So are we all? So is everyone here secretly hoping for a Chinese support?
I think you have to have one, right? Because you're having Easyhoon and Dandy on the team, so you have to have a Chinese support.
Yeah, and it's like, and I always come with that hope that it's 300, but now it's like, oh, well, there are actually somewhat better supports than 300, and he hasn't been performing as well as he used to, perhaps, but that's just, I don't know, that's just nostalgia. Actually, I'm not even sure anymore.
Jezo is really good.
Yeah, Jezo's really good.
Like I said, I'm really excited to see games with this bot lane from PDG's team.
Okay.
Because they're like top 10 Ionia, and they
I didn't even hear about this actually. That sounds hilarious. So... Is he the owner of the team, or is he in the team?
PDG's the owner, so it's not like a weird situation where
Okay.
He's the owner and he's playing now.
No, but they have like a logo and branding and everything, and they're gonna be in TGA, not this weekend, but next weekend. So that'll be
Okay.
fun.
So basically, throughout LPL, during season 5, Vici sort of floated around the 5, 6, 7 position. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like the expectations are really high. They could always just end up in that like same general area in the standings next time. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll see when we have a better idea of the rest of that roster. So okay, so we have Vici Gaming. So let's move on to LGD. So Imp re-signed with them, and Flame left. Princess
Yeah.
is no longer in LGD. Now, I mean, sort of like LGD, everyone's sort of like raising their eyebrow at them. They've had, their really questionable Worlds performance, and then, we were hoping, oh, maybe they'll come into IM San Jose, and they're going to like be like maybe like the most prepared team because like they wanted to show that they were serious, and then they sort of just fell flat on their faces again. So what
It's
are we thinking?
It's a tragedy. Well, it was a tragedy for LGD mostly because it was. I don't want to. This is going to be an awful analogy, but I'm going to go for it. I'm gonna go for this analogy where it's like it was an oncoming train, and for about a year or so, you're like, no, get off the track, everybody. No, please. No. All right. I don't know where I'm going with this. Essentially, LGD was a team that they had their problems, specifically with TBQ, and TBQ had his defenders, but mostly, and I think I was a defender for the most part. Actually, I think as much as I thought that TBQ was poor, I thought
If you want to say he's bad, just say he's bad.
But like, yeah, it is good
I was
points.
a definite detractor.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I spent a portion of every single China Talk message shitting on TBQ.
I just
I'm
remember
just gonna
that.
always keep going. I'm just personally always gonna keep going to like that Weibo thing where he was just like, if you guys think I'm bad, just say I'm bad.
Oh my
That was
god.
so good. Yeah. If you think I'm
But
bad, just say I'm bad, but don't accuse me of betraying my team for a house.
Okay, but okay, let's not derail the conversation. Go on.
But it just came down to the fact that I thought that, like, I thought he was improving, blah, 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 but then when he got into a world stage, finally, it was like, okay, he really needs to perform here, for me at least, because him being stuck in a domestic level and playing against Korean junglers and even really good Chinese junglers at times, you can make that defense that, he's not that bad. If he goes and plays against NA teams or whatever, like international teams, he can show a little bit more in general. But it was pretty poor for the most part, and the worst part about it was just LGD's macro, like their ability to play around the map. I think that was the biggest fault. And for the most part, people are just gonna probably just blame like TBQ because of course he's the jungler, and primarily you get that out of the jungler support, etc. So for that team, I know that they've lost Flame and that they've gotten Imp. So I think for that, it's like it doesn't really mean much. Imp, I think, being on the team again, okay, that does mean a lot. But it's still the same team essentially. And Flame leaving the team is like, well, it's still the same team. It was never the main roster. So we're looking at the main roster and we're like, what's going to happen with the jungle position? I think that's all the question.
Well, okay, so the thing that I want to bring up is, Imp did resign, and, Imp was, based on his performances at the very end of the season, a lot of people were considering him the best AD carry in the world just because he was so self-sufficient, and, he was able to solo with Kog'Maw, so I think that speaks for itself. But I think what the question for this panel at least is what the story with PYL is, because Imp has stated in the past that he joined LGD for PYL, he only enjoyed playing with PYL, and he re-signed. I mean, to be fair, he re-signed for a lot of money, but now we're sort of wondering like, he wasn't the only person that like looked to PYL to guide the team, and PYL was the reason a lot of players were there. So now we're kind of wondering what the story with him is, because again, if he goes, all the other players could go too, the ones that didn't resign. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for now, PYL's contract I think would be through 2017 at least. So if he did want to leave, he'd have to be bought out, which Chinese buyouts can be pretty gross.
But not, it is possible.
It's possible. The thing is that LGD knows how important PYL is to their brand, even if they don't market him necessarily the best. But they know that he's kind of the core of the team, that he attracts players to the team, that he does a lot of the shot calling, and is kind of the mature, friendly player that keeps the environment relatively good. So I think that LGD would have a really hard time letting him go, even if he wanted to go. So I don't necessarily think he'll leave, especially this year. I think Gabriel will probably stay, just because, again, pretty good player. Who are you gonna really replace him with? Again, the question is like top lane and jungle for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's at the moment a really, really big MaRin rumor floating around the Chinese boards.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it was started by the English social media person on Twitter, Jenny, saying that they were just going to get all of the Korean tops and they were going to recruit MaRin, which I don't think she was serious about at all. So, but it's still, regardless of how it started, it's a rumor that exists and that people are talking about, and someone who's regarded in the forum as like the uncle who has all the insider information posted just as blank on her transfer list.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a female person posted on her transfer list. No name, just SKT to LGD. So that's that makes a lot of people think, ooh, this is gonna happen.
I know Emily has a lot of thoughts on MaRin going to top lane potentially. Why don't you enlighten us?
Oh god. Okay. I don't hate MaRin, so I guess I have to preface it with that because I feel like I've been accused of hating him in the past. I just don't think he's as good or as self-sufficient as other Korean tops. And I think then, so if LGD were to get MaRin, I honestly don't see how it's possible to still have TBQ because and yes, this is going to be another me hating on TBQ, I guess. Because the problem with TBQ
you guys are
is that
awful.
Okay, if you had to pick one, Emily, if you had to pick one, MaRin, Bengi, TBQ.
Oh, God.
No, wait. Let me ask it. Let me ask it. Let me frame this a little better. Emily, you're stuck in an elevator with TBQ, Hitler, and someone else, and Stalin. You have a gun with one bullet. Who are you gonna shoot?
Who are you gonna shoot, Emily?
I wouldn't shoot anyone. I don't think I'd be able to shoot a person.
Oh my god, she's the worst. You just saved all 3 lives.
Now she wants to be politically correct. Okay, go on.
I like tried shooting a hunting rifle in Vermont and at a can. It was bad. Like the blowback hurt my shoulder. Anyway, I'm a very small person.
Back to TBQ.
So I think the main problem with LGD is that they formed basically this team that, and their entire focus was covering up for the fact that TBQ wasn't the best jungler, right?
Which
so,
they did pretty well. For
it was like their thing, and they got really good at it. But then the problem,
was the best jungler on that team.
You can make an argument for PYL, okay? So
you have
okay.
PYL is the best jungler and support on that team. So MaRin, the thing with MaRin is that I feel like he does need a certain amount of attention, and he needs to be integrated into the team a specific way, and he needs to be helped. And Acorn didn't really have that problem. And he was their starting top. And again, Flame can take care of himself for the most part, even if he like wants jungle attention. I don't necessarily think he
Acorn was
needs-
able to also when he played.
Yeah, no, I said that. Acorn's like really self-sufficient. I'm saying that Flame, while he doesn't have the history of being self-sufficient, he can be. It's more that like he also wants jungle attention. So I think both of those top laners on LGD were fine with the fact that TBQ is relatively useless to them. I don't think MaRin's going to be the same way. I think he needs a little bit more help. Even though I do think MaRin has grown a lot as a player this year from when he was on SK Telecom T1S. So if that is the decision, I hope to God that they're replacing TBQ, because otherwise I don't think that team will work.
I actually messaged my LGD contacts with links to the Chinese ladder site with 3 Chinese junglers that you know they could scout that are high elo that aren't signed to a team right now. It's like just try them out, see if you like them. Like no pressure, non-commitment.
Just like you
no
just like
commitment.
slide the paper over with their names. Like literally, just do whatever you want with this. Like whatever. Just like just think about. Just think.
I swear it's like some awful matchmaking where it's like, this man is really nice. Please just give him a chance. Here he's. I got his phone number. You don't even have to call him. The number's already dialed.
He's friendly. He works well with others. Okay, but let's not like talk about like MaRin allegedly going until it's official. But so before we move on, like, what's the overall? Do you guys have any overall like impressions for LGD? Like, I know like they've broken your hearts a bit, in a very short amount of time. Do we have any expectations at all?
I've learned my lesson. The only team worth having any expectations for is probably EDG. With the side of maybe like Chowder Snake, OMG, if they can get a decent player.
I was going to say like no Snake after their impressive finals in NES, but let's not. Let's not.
If Snake just gets someone who can draft for them.
Okay, but not okay. Enough about Snake. Let's actually move on. Next news: dade leaves Masters 3. Any thoughts on that? I mean, Satan has left.
What? Why am I just hearing about
from Master?
dade left.
So all dade did was post on Facebook saying looking for team in Korean, and then Master 3 posted a statement a day later saying that they couldn't agree on a price, so dade left.
Okay.
Which pretty much to me sounds like dade was trying to bankrupt their organization.
Fair enough. He
with
seems
his price
very petty.
demand.
So, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like Master 3 was never really that team that people really had expectations for. Like, sometimes they showed up, and other times they kind of just were there. Do we have any like really strong feelings about dade leaving?
It's probably the best thing that could happen to them, and when I say that, it's not because dade is a bad player. It's because if they're not gonna have a structure to really run the team, and you're really relying on the players to like not only just run themselves, but basically have the personality to be self-motivated, dade is not that character. And so you need just find, I don't care who it is. I mean, I do actually. I do care.
Move all of WE Future up to Master.
Yes, please.
You already have PentaQ. Let's go. Let's get Naranja or Oranges or whatever he decides his language he wants his name to be in this week.
Yeah, that's true. I love that.
So basically, Raz hates dade, and then he thinks he's the spawn of Satan. Moving on.
Just put dade on a team with people who actually care.
I mean,
Raz thinks dade is the worst player to ever play League of Legends.
Oh my god.
Honestly, I feel like for support staff or like those really like hard to control players, like they should start considering zookeepers into support staffs for gaming team, you know, with like sedatives and like those like wrangling things for their necks. Like like please, like I think it's a really good idea. Like that's just my opinion. Just, you know, you guys don't even have to pay me for the idea, but I think you're gonna want to thank me at the very least. Like those like really hard to control players, just a little, just
prod them, like
prod them, and you know,
Shock
that's how you
collars, you know.
that's how you train animals, and some of these guys are kind of just might as well
I
be.
mean, I feel like you can use that in a lot of regions. Like, I mean, every region, like,
Yeah,
well,
let's be fair. Every region.
every region.
Okay.
Not saying the players are animals, we're just saying that some of them,
No.
if they have a certain level of
Nor
popularity,
do they resemble animals.
they kind of become divas. So they're a little bit difficult to, if you don't have the right infrastructure, which of course China does not. For the most part. There are exceptions, okay.
EDG is the one exception.
So
Although,
like Snake, like I said, Snake and Chago are pretty good, but yeah. So it's just it's interesting that I just think that they have a certain sense of entitlement. And Team DK, when they disbanded, right, they didn't have much of a league presence. They had a little tiny like TGA team, and but they were really big in Dota 2, and that guy just completely pulled out. And he did say that the streaming environment has made players really entitled. So it's just like, if you don't have the infrastructure to deal with that kind of stuff,
you really need a team presence, because now players they have so much power, and it's gotten to the point where the orgs simply are not well prepared to deal with it. A lot of them are.
Literally the opposite.
Enter zookeepers.
Andy really wants the zookeeper thing to happen.
Yeah.
You guys, when they do that, and I'm pretty sure they will, you guys will thank me and you'll say I'm right, but you know what, whatever. I'm not that type of person that says I told you so. Okay, so the last piece of roster news I want to talk about is Spirit leaving World Elite, which I feel like, when I imagine like him, like when the official statement came out, like when he signed like the paper, he just like opened the doors like that, and there was like a rainbow, and like that song from The Wiz came on. What's the song that goes? Can you feel the brand new day? Yeah, that's what that's what I pictured. Like he's just like skipping down, like animals are like coming out. Like it's kind of like he's never he's like color returned to his world. So what are our thoughts? I mean, I know like essentially
depending on the perspective of that story, he probably has a few like e-girls on each hand going.
I'm trying to keep it PG because this is a family show. But
his teams, I don't know.
Have you seen the GIF where he's like really excited in his bear costume? Because that's the best GIF.
No, please send it to me.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
Okay, so you know he left. He's probably happy. You know he's publicly stated that he's been unhappy with the team, and I feel like it's no real loss to World League, because their new jungler actually debuted in Nest, Wu Shuang, who you know looked really good. So it's no real loss to them, right? So what are our thoughts about this whole thing?
Yeah, when a jungler can communicate with his lanes, or at least immediately, like on day one, it's pretty easy.
That was the thing that I noticed, and this isn't like a super challenging thing, but this is something that I've seen be a problem for a lot of Chinese teams, is that he or the team or whoever was making the call, which is probably, Wu Shuang said in a post-game interview that it was him and Xia, for the most part, making the calls, that they seemed to know when there was an advantage in lane. So when there was like an advantageous matchup, or someone had hit a power spike, he would go gank that lane. And like if someone had a big problem, I think for IG in this tournament, is Zatai solo killed a Luca and was freezing the creep wave, and Kakao never came up to pressure that advantage. So there wasn't really as much advantage that could have been maximized from that. Whereas Wu Shuang was finding the lanes on the other side of the map, like mid. He got Xia ahead by ganking mid. He got bottom lane ahead by ganking bottom. And I think that they he kind of understood where he could be useful the most. And if you look at, they did have, I'm not going to blame the language barrier entirely, but he did have a Chinese player in every single lane, and he is a Chinese player, so they spoke the same language, and that kind of coordination seemed much more seamless for WE than IG, for example, or Vici Gaming. Like, I think both times Wushuang showed up Dandy and Kakao, and that's not necessarily because Wushuang is a better jungler. It's just because the team seemed to be working together better.
Okay, so the thing I want to talk about is, again, this was still an off-season tournament, and it's still World Elite.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, that's my thing. It's just like, oh, he did well, but let's look at the big picture. They're still World Elite, so
Yeah.
do we have any expectations of this team to perform? I mean, then again, they were clearly like at the bottom of the barrel during the LPL season, for season 5. So, do you think they could? I mean, they could only go up, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a whole new bottom I'm not aware of, but
and they'll reach it this year.
So,
yeah.
what do we think?
Well, it depends on do we know what this is, if this is their roster?
I don't think so. There were some people who are connected to the team, so not Aluka himself, and the CEO mentioned something about how he thinks Aluka is still a good player and all this other stuff, so it's whatever. But there were people discussing Aluka potentially retiring before this year. So in that case, and that's where a lot of the WE MaRin rumors came from also. So originally the rumor was it was going to be WE MaRin. So they have an opportunity to secure a Korean player if they want one, to look for more Chinese talent, whatever, because they only right now have Mystic. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have that opportunity.
Okay. So, so basically there's also like a giant question mark in this team. This is potentially not their final roster, so they
And of course,
could get mid god in the top lane. Let's go.
Please. Okay, go on.
Oh yeah, and of course, like the last winner, I think it was on NISO, was RNG. So like preseason motivation during preseason, probably not that big a deal. Though, I don't know, perhaps, because of course, remember in NISO, like World Elite and Invictus Gaming dropped out immediately, but that was a World Elite with Spirit, if I remember right, or am I completely wrong?
No. Which one?
No, okay, that was which one.
So, but it did, like, from the post-game interviews, they did sound excited to have finally won something and stuff like this. So it looked like, and it seemed, weirdly enough, that WE was the most prepared for the meta. Like, they brought out the cool Tristana Trundle bottom lane. They picked Kassadin when it was open, which, yes, please, for the love of God. And they just seemed to have a better idea of what was good on the patch and how to pick it. So, I mean, they had some questionable Trundle first picks, but I think that was just to deny Mata because they knew Mata wanted to play the Trundle. And later on, when they played against Snake, they picked Trundle much later on in the draft and stuff. So, they looked better than the other teams, but I think more of that is falling on the other teams. It being off-season, them all going through roster changes. Vici Gaming didn't even play with a mid laner because they had transferred all their mids to unlimited potential to prepare for Easyhoon to come. Probably because Easyhoon was like, if there's a mid laner on this team, I'm not joining it. Like, screw that. I am not rotating.
PTSD is real.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I think, that's all that's worth saying about World Elite at the moment. And I don't think there's any other roster news worth discussing. We're actually a little bit over than what we initially planned on, so I think really the only thing I kind of want to do is just briefly go over the upcoming tournaments. So All-Stars is next week. That's fun. Any thoughts on this, on China's All-Star lineup? Briefly. None?
It's good. Like it's fine. I think it's gonna be fun to watch for the most part. I think.
TGA. Okay, so TGA and GEC. I don't know the dates, so Kelsey,
It's
when are they?
the same weekend. Pretty much TGA is gonna be the 10th through the 13th, and so what Tencent Games Arena is that it's about amateur teams trying to qualify for LSPL. It's dictated by region. They're big groups. Probably the teams to watch this time around are going to be PDD's team, which we mentioned briefly. They are called Marvelous Gaming Brotherhood, and
Okay.
That's
yeah, it's a very PDD name. And apparently it also, like, the acronym stands for something lewd. I'm not really sure what it is.
That's what I love.
let's
Good
not
to know.
speculate.
And I don't really know anything about Wang Sicong's Panda TV TGA team, but he has one for his streaming platform. And the third one is Pop 187, as we all remember, was able to take down the marvelous Invictus Gaming and advance to quarterfinals where they were summarily destroyed the National Esports Open. So,
Rise of the Net Cafe teams.
yes, they're the only actual Netcafe team in the Netcafe team meme. So,
Okay, well, let's not ruin
They
the
were
fun.
close, so they got to dictate the pace of the meme.
Okay, so when is GEC? What is
And
GEC?
GEC NVIDIA Festival usually has been traditionally like a tournament with the perceived top 4 teams, but they wanted to do something a little bit different this time. They wanted to have a show match. They wanted the theme of the tournament to be Royal Club versus OMG, which I think they probably should have thought this through more, since UZI is probably the biggest figure in that rivalry, since he's been on both teams and he's going to be at All Stars. But whatever. Best laid plans of mice and men. But for now, allegedly, the show match should be Classic OMG versus Classic Royal Club, and current OMG versus Royal Never Give Up. Classic OMG's team is, as we know, Going, Leveling, Cool, San, and Pomelo. Classic Royals roster, and this is the best part, okay? Let's prepare ourselves properly for this.
Oh my god.
Godlike, Lucky, okay, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Corn, you can kind of fudge that a little because he was part of a Royal Club team
Well,
as
did
well.
they just really just want to rewrite history with whites? Is that just what's gonna
Probably
happen?
Whites was like, I'm not going to that crappy tournament.
It's like-
UZI, and you would think, Tabe, Zero, maybe, but Zero isn't Chinese, so that's not really classic Royals. You can't really use Zero. Everyone hates Tabe, so who do we get? Who do we get, Raz? Who?
Uh-oh, please don't say it.
Dada 7. Which makes no sense, because he wasn't even ever on Royal Club, and you could get Lei, who played
TCT.
AD carry. You could get TCT, who was actually part of the organization. You could get XJJ. All of these are Chinese supports that have played on Royal before. And hurrah! Yeah.
It's like a joke that keeps coming.
You cannot get rid of Dada 7. He just
Dada 7 is literally just a dad joke. It's just
He
like a
won't go
dad.
away.
He just keeps coming back. You thought you've killed it.
So that is the Galaxy Esports Carnival event, which, since there is no UZI, it's going to be kind of hard for that event to go off as it has been proposed. So we'll see how that develops in the coming week.
Okay.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I feel like All Stars is pretty much what everyone's going to be like keeping their eyes on. Yeah, but it's good to know in case everyone has the urge to watch something else.
China, the time zone difference, right, allows you to watch at least 2 of those, so All Stars and something else, if you want.
So I think that's all I wanted to talk about this week. So let's send it off. Who's writing what this week?
All right, here we go.
Uh,
Really?
I'm working on a EU piece, and I always do my weekly rebuilding China column, and I'll probably write something on Xiaogu. So
Exciting, exciting. Emily?
I wrote about how sister teams, basically like loss of sister teams are a huge blow to the Korean infrastructure, earlier this week, and then probably gonna write something about OGN's history in Korean esports, a really brief thing, and possibly touch upon the Wang Sicong acquisition as well, just kind of comparing the two regions a little bit, because I think the separate storylines are really interesting, and since they're happening pretty much simultaneously, I think it's, I guess, an interesting thing to look at, and that should be out later today.
Yeah. Okay.
Raz, Dignitas is going to IM Cologne. Congrats.
Thank you.
Are you excited?
I'm pretty excited. Yeah, I think cultivation of our work is going to be seen there. I think a lot of people are going to be. I'm just going to say, yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised, mostly because I feel like the negativity is the most thing you can really get out of most of people's expectations. I might be going. I'm pretty sure. So it will be
Will you be wearing a suit?
interesting. I will. You know what? Just for you. Just for you. Actually.
are you gonna kick Xiaogu in the ass?
I will kick them right in the ass. Right.
Be
Right in the
gentle.
ass.
Don't be gentle. Don't be bruises like a peach.
Oh my goodness. I've been like,
Okay.
all of last night I was thinking, how do I approach doing B for a picture? Like, so
Well,
yeah.
Dwayne
He
likes
probably-
skins. That's how he picks his champions. Remember? So
Yes.
Yeah.
so basically, you have
Let's
to like.
not finish this joke.
So basically, dress up as one of the skins he enjoys for his champions, and then approach him that way. I feel like that's like the best rabbit trap for him.
Okay, that joke went in a lot better place than I thought it was gonna go.
This is a show for families. Children watch it. Okay. So yeah, please keep your head out of the gutter.
We'll try.
Okay.
It's the
So
Wang Sicong family show.
This show could potentially be allowed on Panda TV by Wang Sicong.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, let's just appeal ourselves. We're available. We're happy. We're not Chinese, so I mean, if you feel like 3 white people and 1 black dude talking about China, like diversity. So okay, there's my pitch. That's all I could offer. Okay, Raz, are you writing anything? I know you've
No.
mentioned that you've wanted to go back into writing.
Yeah, but I feel like, there will be a lot of things.
Okay,
hopefully,
eventually.
depending. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
no pressure.
Soon TM.
Okay, so I think that's everything. Had a blast. So everybody wave to the camera.